Good morning, everyone watching this virtual artist talk remotely here at VCSU. My name is Professor Angela Mirso, Chair of the Art Department and Director of the VCSU Galleries, and welcoming you today for this first Fall 2020 Artist Talk here, virtually and on campus at VCSU. Today, we'll be showcasing Professor Ekow Ephrim's talk on the Space InBetween. We hope you will enjoy and think critically about what he will be talking about and also using it to discuss further after the talk. Please put your questions in the chat on YouTube, and I will now pass the mic off to Professor Ekow Ephrim.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Angela, for the awesome introduction. So, welcome to the Space InBetween. I'm going to go through this lecture by first talking about my background and move on to talking about some of the commercial works that I've done, talk a little bit about my MFA work, and move on to the Space InBetween, and finally move on to my current work. I grew up in Ghana, West Africa, and it's a very beautiful place, I must say. While growing up, I was asked so many questions, and what you see on your screen right now, what do you want to do when you grow up, is a question that was asked most of the time, and I had different answers for. I started my undergraduate studies in University of Education, Winneba in Ghana, and I completed in 2015, where I did a lot of exploration, learning, and getting along to know the graphic design practice more. So my background in graphic design actually started when I was in high school. But when I went to the university, I kind of became more interested in graphic design. From there, I came to the United States in 2017, and I started my MFA. And most of my MFA work was a lot of exploration and discovering myself and the graphic design discipline. So while I was growing up, this question actually became something that I really struggled with. What do you want to be when you grow up? I think most of you have also been asked these questions, and I must say that a percentage of you are now doing probably something different from what the questions, the answers that you gave at the time. I remember saying I wanted to become a lawyer at a point. I wanted to become a doctor at a point. But looking back and tracing the things that I was doing, even when I was a kid, kind of link what I'm doing right now as a graphic designer. I remember one time my mom just told me, because every day I was giving a new answer, what I wanted to become, right? But my mom once told me, well, whatever you do, make sure it's really important to you and make sure it benefits others too. And that resonated very well with me. So now I'm a graphic designer and I'm an artist as well. Whenever I say these two things or separate these two things, people kind of ask me, what do you mean? I'm going to touch base on that as I move on. So I'm an artist and I'm a graphic designer, but whenever I say I'm a graphic designer, people still ask me, what do you do? Because the graphic design discipline is very broad, and people do a whole lot of things: web design, poster design, brand identity system, right? All these things come together to form the graphic design discipline. So when these questions were being asked, I we'll basically go through some of the works that I do, like these commercial works that I was doing for, so after my undergraduate, I worked a little over 2 years with University of Cape Coast Print and Press, and I was doing page layouts, designing magazines, brochures, and other things. Most of them were corporate work that I was doing. So I also had the opportunity to work with some NGOs and non-governmental organizations that really actually contributed to what I do right now in some way. So this is a magazine that I helped. What I did with this was, because I understood color and the way we perceive color and the way that color prints, it kind of helped me to get into this project, and a lot of people commended me on this work for making it, for making them get the actual colors that they wanted and kind of communicate their information through color. Or I can also show you this brand identity system that I created for another non-governmental organization, an NGO based in Ghana. And, putting them into effect to see how it's going to resonate with the people, right? So with this particular design, they were talking about putting roofs on people, helping people, putting smiles on their faces, and as a way of showing love. So as you can see here in the logo, that idea is what I was trying to communicate through this simple logo. Or I can also talk about this work that I did for the United Nations Environmental Program, which I always show, even though I consider it one of the works that I did in the commercial field before I came into the academic field. So this, I also did it during the period when I was working in the printing press. Alongside, we're also doing a little bit of photography stuff, just to, get along, make some profits, and so these are some of the photographs that I took, but what makes this work really important to me is that it is not about the photograph that I took and took the money. It was more about exploring relationships. And this work actually came about when I and some friends, we took a couple of these photographs in the studio, roughly more than we can count, but I displayed some of these works in the studio as a form of advertising, like this is what we do in the studio. Come in, if you need a passport photograph, come in and take it. So while we display some of these, I realized that people come in and say, hey, I know this person, and I know that person, and I know this person. So it was very interesting. At the time, all I knew was kind of making money out of these things. But as time went by, I was just focusing on the relationship that is being built within this photographs. So I was using people that I refer to as referees, and what they were doing was they are just the unsuspected people that just show up in the studio coming to do something else, right? So whenever they come in, they just point out, and secretly I record that and put all of these pictures together, right? So all these people are in some way linked, but they have no idea that they are even linked in any way, right? So these referees that I'm talking about are actually not part of this body of work, right? So the person who actually linked the two of them it's not part of this line of people that I have in this work. So as I already said, I was exploring the connections, right? And these referees also have no idea that they are participating in this project, right? So in this work, when you look at those side by side, the next person does not really know the person on the right, like this woman right here, does not know the lady on the right directly, but there is someone who knows the two of them, right? The same applies to the lady on the right, the second lady on the lineup. Also, there was someone who was able to link the next person right beside him, but had no idea that that link actually exists. So moving on to what I was doing during my MFA. Most of my MFA work was a lot of exploration in the letterpress, and letterpress is a very unique form of printing, where every print that you make, compared to digital print, every print that you make is original. When I say that, I mean digital print, you have one image on your computer, you issue the command, the printer does its own thing. But when you are using the letterpress, every single print have a distinct feature. And this is one thing that I was exploring as to the effect that we create in the digital platform and the effect that we get when we are using the letterpress. The focus on this was basically the medium itself, not the work itself, right? So here I was actually exploring the use of rubber-based inks in the letterpress printing process and how they reproduce themselves when you start overlaying them on top of each other. Thinking about bringing this into how technology has evolved and printing it in a digital form, then this we're going to say we're going to use a lot of transparencies, we're going to use a lot of metal mixtures and other things to kind of achieve the same effect that at the time was completely manual, and you have to have this, you have to perceive this before you actually set the letterpress bed. So this was more like an experimental process to me. Another work that I did was the hybrid media, where I was exploring composition. I was also exploring, still exploring the rubber-based inks, trying to link it with how technology is actually affecting the way we reproduce things and design. So a lot of conversation goes on when it comes to this particular work. One, I was exploring the medium. I was exploring its relationship between the new and the old technology, and what direction is the design field going. Over the years, I've realized that in our education system, students are actually directed to use what is available to them, right? So in Indiana University, where I did my MFA, it was more like letterpress. You have to do the letterpress whether you like it, in some way, whether you like it or not, because we try to utilize the facility that we have. So I was kind of asking the question, is it really important as creative people? Is it really important for us to make it compulsory for people to use the materials or the tools because they are there or not? So that was one thing that I was looking at. I was also using it as a way of exploring some techniques that we can achieve in using like digital media to produce a particular work as compared to using a manual process to produce the same work, and what effects are we going to get. So I can say that when we look at the parallels between what we were using previously, like the digital, like the manual processes that we were using, here the letterpress that we were using, and coming back to using something like Photoshop to redesign something. How do I crop something on the letterpress bed? How do I resize it on the letterpress bed using the same thing, the same block that I'm using? So this is the blocks that I was using in on the letterpress. I was using this block to print the letterpress, and how I created this was using the laser cut. So the laser cut is kind of a very modern tool, right, that we use. But why is it that even in this era we want to print in letterpress, but we go all the way back to use this modern tool, you know, and regress all the way back to the letterpress and use it to print, right? That uniqueness, that feeling, and that originality that comes with the letterpress is one thing that actually makes it more interesting and more attractive for people, and that allows people to kind of get to interact with your work really well. So these pieces, as you can see, the form that I was showing you, the blocks that I was showing you, are not necessarily, you don't see the entire thing, right? Because I was using these different processes to kind of crop off some areas of which probably in Photoshop I would just pick the crop tool and say, let me take this part off, and that would become so these are some of the works that I was doing during my MFA, alongside doing a lot of digital stuff as well. So the space in between is it's a term that I actually, it's about, okay, let me put it this way. The design field has always been about the commercial aspect. We train our students to go to the field to work and, you know, make profit, make some money. But as time goes on, I ask myself a question. In the absence of the client, what else can we do with design, right? When we go to work and probably we don't have any design work to do, what is the use of your skill, right, in helping the society? I believe that design has some level of responsibility to society, and that should be something that every designer kind of should weigh and attach it to what they are doing as graphic designers, right? So historically, designers have been only the mediators rather than the creators of the text, right? So that has become something that is kind of seemingly indestructible. Like when you take away the client, then the designer is, the graphic designer's work is actually hanging. And so in order to challenge this paradigm and also towards my design philosophy, I stumbled across this type of design that is called design for social impact. Design for social impact is a term I came across a couple of years ago from reading books from Christopher Simons and Andrew Shee, who kind of focus on our everyday activities and what people go through, and use that as a way of fixing the problems, common little problems in our society, right? So when I say I design for social impact, when I say I design for social impact, I mean I use storytelling, which is usually visual, and I also use design, right? And these two things come together to create an impact. Design actually can be used as a way to provoke an action, and that is where I focus on. Design can persuade, design can provoke an action, and when you focus on that, you are more likely to get your information across and impact change in our society. I can best tell this story through the electronic waste pollution in Ghana, and it's worse and getting worse day in and day out. Most of the technology that we said, oh, let me put it in a recycle bin, right? The recycle bin is just a container most of the time, but where does it go, right? The last time that I did like a research on, the recycle companies that are in the United States actually do not even meet about half of the electronic waste pollution. They cannot recycle them, right? So what we do is, oh, let's fix it in a way and ship them. That is one thing that we do to electronic waste pollution, and every country is now struggling with this. To change something that affects society, there are various ways that you can do that. You can do that by creating prompts. Prompt is one thing that you can use it to actually stop people from doing something, or to provoke people and get them to do something. Or prompt like a poster can actually get people to do what you want them to do. Or you can use money to kind of control the way people behave in society. For example, if you don't want people to use a particular product, you just raise the price and most people stop buying it if they don't have the money. So I focus on the prompts, the visual aspects, right? To tell people, communicate this information to people. So here what I was doing was extracting information from research that I conducted, both research that is both primary research data and secondary research data, and combining all of them into this simple poster that uses just simple text to kind of give a prompt. Why don't we make the companies take everything back if they are producing it, right? Why don't you make them take it back? And it also speaks to global warming. Global warming is a problem that we are really struggling with right now, but no, it's impossible to achieve if one country says, I'm doing it, I'm going to produce electric cars that probably Africa cannot afford, right? We will still be banning these things, and the ozone layer is one, it's the same thing. So if you are doing creating electric cars, building electric cars, and half of the planet is burning stuff and doing a whole lot of the opposite, then we are not getting anywhere, right? I remember I was reading a document that said that because of the rate at which the plants in Africa are dying, the forest is being depleted, it's actually changing the wind direction in the United States. And that was unbelievable. Like, look at the distance between these two continents and see how one is affecting the other. So it's virtually impossible, right? So bringing this into the conversation is one thing that actually helps. So I created these illustrations that looked very nice, but also bringing some sort of disorganization in these illustrations. I'm going to move on to talking about my thesis work, which is Reach Out. Reach Out is, it combines research. I was trying to blur the boundaries between design, research, and service, and bringing all of them together to create an impact. And who was my target audience? It was international student. International student, at the time, I was also an international student, and it's something that is very, we don't even talk about it at all. The problems that international students go through, it's unbelievable, some of the things that people say, but they don't really talk about it and they struggle with it. So what I did was I was going to these international students and gathering some information from them, their challenges and their struggles. Their challenges and their struggles was what I was focusing on, and bringing it down to like everyday activities, right? Their everyday activities and their interaction with people. And that is what I put together and created this body of work. So putting it all together, this is how it looks like. This is how I display them. So I got them to write their experiences on a piece of paper, which was then digitized and digitized by scanning them in and using their handwriting as a way of attaching some sort of personality to each individual poster. So I remember collecting a whole lot, but I reduced the content into those that I thought was going to be very impactful and those that I think people are going to really, it's going to really affect the way people think and perceive international students. So these are just a few that I picked out. This student actually told me a very strange story about, sometimes it's not about what was said, right? It's looking at this, if you want to tell someone that, oh, just take an English class, it's going to be good. I had professors who told me almost the same thing, but it wasn't as harsh as the story that was behind it, right? The way you say something can actually offend the person in some way. And most of these international students don't talk about it. They just keep quiet, and it stays with them, and at the end of the day, it affects their mental health in the long run. So I was also using this as a way of drawing the attention of the university community. Here it was Indiana University, which has a very large body of international students, that this is a problem, right? So I am using this as the visuals for you to bring closer the university community and make them pay attention more to the international students. So this was one that was really one of those posters that people really actually talked about. In class, when they have to form groups and other things, then everyone else kind of withdraws, and they all make the group without them, right? So talking about creating an impact in society, one thing that I always bring up is our humanity, our existence, right? How do we help each other in this course? This is what I find I describe as the space in between what you are doing as a designer and what you are, in the absence of the client, what do you do as a designer? What is the use of your skill and your ability at the end of the day when the client is not there? And encouraging people to kind of use design as a way, as a provocative language, right? To communicate some ideas and bring into the awareness of some basic things that go on in our society, right? So as a person, I am very sensitive to my environment. I make sure I read my room very well, especially not because I am an African, right? But I read my room wherever I go and try to identify what the problem is. You can get me to just, I'm going home and I just enter a classroom and I say, this is not right, I have to put it right before I leave. So that is one thing that that is one part of me, right? I am very sensitive to my environment. And through that, I make sure I identify problems and use it as a way of so democracy, this body of work, I must say, is not partisan. It is already an information that is in the public domain. But before it came out and listening to the conversations that was happening around the Russia investigation and other things, I was very curious in how the document was going to be, the Mueller report was going to be redacted and other things. I am always fascinated with shapes. So some of the works that I previously showed you kind of do with shapes and how things are cropped, how things are organized. So I actually kind of perceived what was to come. Like, we're going to have a page that is probably entirely blank in the Mueller report, right? And I kind of just sat down and I was kind of perceiving how the visuals are going to be, right? What is going to be taken out? What is going to be left? Is it going to be really relevant, right? So this is one of the first posters that I created, right? It was just a complete blank page in the Mueller report, right? And when you look underneath it, you will find some of the quotes that I pulled out of the Mueller report. And as I said again, this is non-partisan. It is something that a visual person kind of sit down and kind of perceive some of these things and what is to come. So this I was focusing on what I called, I name it harm to ongoing matter, because that was the main reason most of the redacted aspects of the Mueller report was focused on the fact that it will cause harm to an ongoing matter. So I was also looking at each section of the Mueller report and kind of looking at what was redacted, which aspects of it was redacted, right? So here you can see what aspects of even the table of contents, some of them were redacted, right? Which makes it somehow very difficult to read. My aim for this work is to get people curious and for them to take part in their own democracy, right? Because I listen to the news a lot, and people kind of talk about, oh, I'm not interested. At the end of the day, I'm going to cast my vote based on what I believe in. But there are some things out there that is in the public domain that you need to have access to, right? So these are like, my conclusion was the most interesting part was redacted, both in the volume 1 and the volume 2. So putting together the yellow overlay on this text is basically another page that was really heavily redacted from the Mueller report. And these were all the reasons why the redactions took place. And translating them into this visual language is what actually drives this work, right? And aside the fact that you need to participate in your own democracy and look at what is true, right? Now we live in this digital age where information and social media is kind of giving us a whole different view on the way we consume information, what is right and what is wrong, right? So this was also part that I found very interesting, where a written memo was actually translated. All these things came into play, like showing the extent to which the investigation went, and what was collected, right? Even the most simple sheet of paper that the investigation actually scrutinized and collected all of this information and brought it together. So this one was one of the interesting ones. So I was looking at both the negative and the positive space of each page, and I realized, oh, these 8 red stripes and these 7 white stripes kind of goes back to the U.S. flag in a way. So, right, this reduction, that's what does it mean? Even with that, how do I translate it into something looking at both aesthetics and what it means to translate some of these data into like visually interesting and visually appealing posters. So the text on it that say does not exonerate him is one thing that was really emphasized in the Mueller report, and that I actually added it to kind of show like that this reduction does not necessarily exonerate. This was what they were really talking about. So this body of work is what I do. It's a series that I'm still doing, right? Still looking at the Mueller report and thinking about the way that I'm going to translate some of these data into visuals that are really provocative and very interesting. I must say, probably some of you are now seeing or getting to know that some of these things, some of these things were even written in the Mueller report. So the space in between, if I say the space in between, I'm actually referring to the space between that practice as a graphic designer and the altruistic aspects of graphic designer, where it has nothing to do with our personal interest, like probably making money out of it, right? So to me, most designers prefer these, the commercial aspect of design, but for me, blending into the background and analyzing and observing my immediate environment and kind of interacting with my immediate environment, putting all of these together and analyzing them kind of give me some level of comfort, knowing that I'm helping the society and not only like doing design when someone needs me to do something. Okay, all right. Thank you. So I'm going to receive questions. If we could, do I have any questions so far?
Ekow,
Hi.
what impact are you hoping to have on to VCSU students with your work? And what impact are you hoping to share to students today at VCSU?
Yeah, what I'm hoping to share with my work is that I did not have the opportunity to explore my own area of interest, right? It was like, oh, go to the classroom, be assigned assignment, and then go home, right? But you also, no matter what you are doing, you have to find an aspect that it's very important to you, right? Yeah, it shouldn't be the norm, or what people are doing is exactly what I'm going to follow, right? Yeah, but you need to have some level of interest and use your expertise and your abilities to kind of help society. I have a philosophy that no matter what we do, I don't really talk about so many of, I don't bring race into my work, I don't bring gender into my work. I just do what I do, right? With a hope that I'm going to impact everyone that come into contact with my work, right? And not having this, the norm that we have in society, right? So relating something like race and gender to my work is absolutely not, I don't talk about those things in my work.
And I have another question. With the color story you used in the Mueller report, how did you choose the colors and what do they represent?
Okay, so some of these colors, I really didn't want it to be political, right? I was looking at colors that really, it becomes very difficult to actually associate any sort of political or social ideologies to them, right? Except for this one that I heavily used the colors of the United States flag and kind of bringing it into the conversation as to like your responsibility in taking part in this democracy, right? And also with this work, actually, I am trying to get people to engage with the Mueller report and know what is in it, right? Yeah. So most of these colors are colors that I actually sat down. Most of them were for emphasis. Most of them were for kind of creating contrasts between the foreground and the background and those decisions. Yeah, but I was also looking at a very specific way of stripping away any political ideologies and any social ideologies that other people might hold. Yeah.
And then, okay, another question I got was from, with the international students with the reach out, were you surprised that the referees all had a connection through other people?
The connections with the people, that would be this work.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew there was this connection, right? So back in Africa where I grew up, we always say treat everyone nice. You don't know when you're going to meet someone, right? I knew that existed, right? But I was also thinking about the ripple effect of telling people your story and how it can get to people. There are times that I've had my story go back and come back to me, right? Even when the person that I told have no direct link to the last person that I heard from, right? So I was kind of, I would say I was surprised in a way about how it turned out to be successful. Yeah, how it turned out to be successful and what I started to like perceive as people kind of link them together. They link these people together. I was a bit surprised, but not 100%. I know it was something that was out there, but it really it was possible. Yeah.
What advice do you have for VCSU students when they see this work? What should they do? Should they talk about it? What advice do you give students?
Yeah, so I think I say this every single class that I teach, that if you are creating an art piece, it is not the art piece most of the time, the art piece itself. In your absence, what will people say about your work, right? An art piece is something that can speak different languages, right? Because when I'm not there and I don't have that description, how will people interact with this work, right? So I want you to look at this body of work, read its contents, and try and establish a conversation around it. And that, in a way, the art students, you can actually apply it to your work and start building some ideas for your work, right? So your work won't just hang in the loop. Everyone, when we talk about printmaking, everyone is printing, right? When we talk about digital design, everyone is creating digital image right now. But what conversation can we actually establish around the work that you are creating?
Okay, next question. Do you enjoy letterpress printing or silkscreen printing?
Oh, that is a very good question. I would say that should be a subjective thing. It's very subjective, like what I'm interested in. I enjoy both, depending on what I'm doing, right? There is a book that I read called The Medium is the Message. And when we are talking about letterpress, it makes sense to print in letterpress, right? And when we are talking about screen printing, it makes sense to print in screen print, right? So what information are you communicating? I remember asking one of my professors, why are you doing prints, letterpress prints at this time? And he said, oh, I'm going to a print workshop, a letterpress print workshop. And that kind of establishes why you are using that medium, right? So you don't, yeah, I enjoy both of them, but I most of the time look at the medium and how it's going to affect the work. It's not just about exploring the medium, right? Most artworks is not necessarily about the artwork itself. Sometimes it's about the medium, right? So, yeah, I really enjoy both. Looking at the way I am very comfortable exploring different mediums. Just that both of them, when I'm weighing them, I'll say both of them have the same work. you need to go through the same amount of work, right? So when I go back to this, this was actually old typeface, somehow about 200 years old, that I was using. That collection is in Indiana University. So yeah, it was very difficult to find even the same sizes of typefaces, right? And this one, I actually had to design from digital, move back and carve it in, cut it in, what do you call it? No, this is these wood blocks that I use laser cuts to cut them, right? So here we are talking about different mediums that I'm using, right? Why would a student go through this whole thing, this whole process of designing on digital, coming back to CAD and then after that, bringing it back to the letterpress, which also takes some amount of time, right, to do it. But that uniqueness of letterpress, right, where you print two posters, they look exactly the same, but when you go into details, you have these different textures happening in that same work, right? So I like both. I like both. Yeah.
I have another question. What advice do you have for us students as artists to fully be able to not be nervous or scared to showcase our true feelings through our art?
One thing is to have clear mind. I must say that whenever, if you speak about to some of my professors, what I say is what I say, right? When I'm talking about my work, what is not there, I don't try to put it there. And what I put there is what is there, right? I can translate it into something else that it is not. So in order for you to do that, you have to have a very strong grounds on whatever you say, right? I know a lot of conversation is happening around, you know, in our era, right? There's a lot of things that is happening, but I don't pay attention to that, right? For example, you send me an email about Black History Month and I won't go. Not for some of them I go, right? But for some of them I won't go. I will actually research what is happening before I go, right? So being able to stand your grounds and taking a decision is one thing that you need to, you know, do, right? If you panic or get scared of some of these things, you won't do anything, right? So just be yourself, express it, have a very good reason, right? So when you go all the way back to my democracy work, right? I've put in it as a statement there. I know people are going to have different ideologies about this work, but I'm doing it anyway, right? This is not partisan. I've told you that. I don't even vote in the United States, right? So if you meet this work just like that and you have these ideologies that you just bring in, you are totally wrong, right? Yeah, so some of these things you just have to get along, do it. If it's the medium that you're exploring, go ahead. Don't be afraid of you know, getting it wrong or people talking about it. I think a whole lot of things are going on right now. There'll be a whole lot of conversation, but you must do what you love doing. Yeah.
Another question. What are some tips for new artists or students with little experience with any forms of art?
With little experience, one thing I would say, go. There are a lot of books out there. There are a lot of inspiration out there, right? Look at both contemporary and non-contemporary artists and learn from them, right? And through that, I think you establish some sort of link between you. Most great artists kind of stumble upon what they are really known for, right? So exploring different artists, I don't know the extent that you are really interested in a specific medium, but if it's an artist, think about what is going on in your environment. How are you sensitive to your environment? And that is going to really translate in the work that you do.
I had another question with the unseen.
Okay.
What is next with the connection and any future projects planned with the VCSU community with that kind of project of unseen?
Well, I must say I haven't thought about that, but yeah, I haven't thought about that, but it's something that I can do. I was thinking about doing a project on randomly photographing people and trying to, it's something that I'm still, putting together. It's just an idea, but I don't have, I can't really tell what I'm doing with that right now. Yeah, I must say that.
And then what aided your decision in becoming a professor of art?
Oh yeah, so that is a very good question. I'm glad the person asked. So I am looking at the graphic design field, as in what I do as a graphic designer, trying to use design to help the society, right? So thinking through that, I think me being able to get in touch with students, new generation of designers coming up, it's going to give me that opportunity to help my students and contribute to this changing field in graphic design, right? So, putting in those ideas that I have, right? Just not only focusing on the lucrative aspect of design, right? We need designers who actually need to be influential on the next generation of artists and designers that are coming up. So yeah, that is one of the reasons why I decided to teach. But teaching has always been something that I have loved to do ever since I got to know design. I started teaching as soon as I started doing design stuff right around 2010. Yeah, so yeah.
And then I think the last question, what makes you want to observe and blend in as an artist compared to other artists who want to stand out?
Can you come again? The last part?
What makes you want to observe and blend in as an artist compared to other artists who want to stand out?
So what makes you stand out is what you are doing different that other people are not doing, right? So to me personally, I kind of separate what is art from what is design, right? It's a long conversation that I've had for the past 3 years with some of my professors, that when they are looking at my work, I say, this is design, this is not art. Don't look at it as an artwork. It's design, because design actually helps people, right? Design is utilitarian, right? Most of the time, when you look at what design is, right? While we are here, the classroom has been designed in a way that we'll be able to move around, we'll be able to social distance, right? That is what we call design. So the artistic aspect comes in when most of the time I'm exploring medium, right? So to the question of what makes me stand out, I would say the way I view design, right? I know possibly there are other people doing, the design for social impact is not a new term, right? But what I'm doing that is different from most graphic designers is my ability to observe my environment, identify a problem, and try to solve it with design, as compared to waking up in the morning or freelancing and trying to, all those things are really important, but it is not all that there is to design and arts itself.
And I think there are no more questions.
No more?
Right.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate your coming. Angela, if you have anything.
I just want to say thank you to all who have viewed this virtually. I greatly appreciate all the support here in the VCSU community, faculty, staff, and students. Also, thank you, Eric Kringley and his team for recording this today. Thank you very much. And I want to just say, one, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at VCSU Art Department. And stay tuned for our senior art education major, Shania Schooler, who will be showcasing her work later this semester. Please stay tuned for the dates. Thank you, and go Vikings!